So, Pokemon. This video's been on the back burner for a while, but with nothing better to do, I just decided to go ahead and turn a list I came up with about half a year ago into a video. The stories of Pokemon games, to put it lightly, are not the most acclaimed part of the series. With one exception that actively hurt the games it's attached to, most stories take a major backseat in favor of the series' reliable and excellent gameplay loop, cute designs, and fun maps. However, every main series Pokemon game is still story-driven and a story needs a climax. Some of these climaxes have been nothing short of incredible, some have been good, and some have been Radio Tower. So, some time ago, I decided to rank all of them, and now I'm getting a video out of it. I should mention that I'm not ranking the actual final battles of each game, which is usually the champion. This list is ranking the final battles of the stories of each game, which usually boils down to a fight against the evil team's leader. Usually, but not always. So with that said, let's get started with... I don't even know what to say here. This fight, and this character in general, are so unmemorable that I'm willing to bet a lot of people don't even remember his name. The climax of Gen 2's story revolves around Team Rocket taking over Radio Tower and trying to find Giovanni to lead Team Rocket again. Now, you'd expect the final battle against Team Rocket in this game to be a rematch against Giovanni, right? That would be incorrect. Instead, we get a fight against this admin, Archie, who pulls up with a Koffing that can't even explode, and then a Houndour and Houndoom. Two members of the same evolution line, and in the remakes, Archie actually uses physical moves on them. This is the final battle of a story. Yes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver do add a post-game battle with Giovanni. Yes, that battle is great and offers further development for both Giovanni and Silver. However, that does nothing to improve this anticlimax of a fight against Archie. In fact, remember what I said about this guy being unmemorable? His name isn't even Archie, it's Archer. At least we can only go up from here. Standing just outside of the top 10, but not quite in last place, we have what I believe will be my most controversial pick of this entire list. It's Giovanni. Yes, the twist that he's the Viridian City gym leader you haven't been able to fight this entire time is a good one, the second best twist in the game for sure. Yes, Giovanni has had some great battles over the generations, from the aforementioned Heart Gold and Soul Silver fight to the climax of the Rainbow Rocket storyline, featuring Rhyperior with Edgequake alongside Mega Mewtwo. His gym fight in Gen 1 just isn't one of those great battles. And it all comes down to the fact that Game Freak hadn't figured out to make good movesets in Gen 1 or even Gen 3. His Gen 1 fight has a total of 2 ground moves, and one of them is Fissure. While the movesets are upgraded in Gen 3 with every member of his team knowing Earthquake, this is counterbalanced by the developers, for some reason, deciding to make his ace a Rhyhorn. I think I'll leave it there. Gen 6 tried the same formula as Gen 5 in a lot of aspects, but didn't put in nearly as much effort and suffered as a result. However, I will give the games this. The final battle against Lysander, is actually pretty good. For one, presentation-wise, this fight goes pretty hard. The introductory cutscene featuring Lysander's new outfit is excellent, the arena's pretty cool, and the music is obviously amazing. For another, his team is actually competent. Half of them do have 3 moves, but they hit hard and fast. Finally, and most importantly, this is a fight that uses Mega Evolution, and uses it pretty well. Mega Gyarados with Earthquake to hit electric types, Stab Aqua Tail, and Outrage on top of that is pretty intimidating, pun completely intended. On top of this, the almost non-existence of Mega Evolved opponents throughout this game, though a serious missed opportunity, makes this fight feel all the more special and climactic. And that's what puts it above Giovanni. Now if you'll excuse me, I'd like to wipe away the impurities, and make it as beautiful as me. I'm ranking Hoenn's evil team leaders together because why wouldn't I? Anyway, the original versions of their fights, even in Emerald, probably wouldn't have placed above Lysanderoth. But then Oras came in, gave them Mega Evolutions, and they instantly shot up a slot. Every compliment I gave Lysanderoth applies here, except it's attached to actually good characters this time. The music is even better than both the original version of the theme and Lysanderoth's already great theme. In fact, I go so far as to say it's a contender for the best evil team leader theme of all time. The battle arena perfectly suits both versions of the fight, and the Mega Evolutions command respect, despite the lackluster rest of the team. I give the slight edge to Archie because his character is more entertaining and Mega Sharpedo is Stab's Strong Jaw boosted crunch, as opposed to Mega Camerup's complete lack of stab, but it's a slim difference. It's iconic, it's fun, it's intimidating, it's Maxie and Archie. Now, we move to the A tier. Pokemon Sword and Shield, in my opinion and the opinion of many others, has the worst story in any Pokemon game since Generation 2. Although Leon's a well-written champion in my opinion, He's a bright spot in a painfully generic and idiotic story featuring a very lame twist villain. But if there's anything that Sword and Shield got right with its story, it's Eternatus. The spectacle, the threat, the design, the absurd power and speed, featuring Dynamax cannon and actual fire coverage. The simply incomprehensible and atmospheric music that sets the tone perfectly. And all of that is just Phase 1. Eternamax Eternatus is the most terrifying Pokemon battle of all time, in my opinion. In fact, don't take it from me. Take it from the Pokemon who couldn't land a hit on this beast. The music changes to something even more hopeless, as the player character and Hop try everything they can in order to have a semblance of a chance. And then the dogs show up. I'm not going to lie. Although it's a great decision to have the final battle be a Dynamax raid, the dogs being there takes a lot of tension off of the fight, and this is the reason why I ultimately decided against putting this fight any higher. At least this phase of the fight has some pretty good music, and the spectacle is still there. Eternatus is one of my favorite box legendaries in general, and I'm glad it got an amazing fight, even if it was on the heels of something a bit more iconic. Say what you will about Generation 7. The story being the main focus of the games for once seriously took away from most people's enjoyment of them, even if it was a good story. Z-moves are by far the worst generational mechanic, in my opinion and the opinion of many others. But Ultra Sun and Moon had the guts to throw an Omni-boosted Ultra Necrozma at you. Let me repeat that. This is a Pokemon with a higher base stat total than Arceus. And it's Omni-boosted, with an actually competent moveset. Sure, there are ways to cheese the fight, most notably fear strategies, but does that even matter? The spectacle was simply unrivaled when these games came out, although I personally believe it's since been topped by Eternatus. The music is iconic for a reason. It's an insane ending to the story of Necrozma that's been subtly built up throughout the Ultra games. However, I do have to dock points for Necrozma hijacking a much better story that I will certainly get to. This didn't end up changing the fight's placement though. Let me say this again. They threw an Omni-boosted Ultra Necrozma at you. Lukewarm take. While I think the story of the first Gen 5 games are slightly better, I personally think Ghetsis is at his best in the sequel. He doesn't show up for long, but he makes his presence felt, with the crown jewel being his attempted murder of a child. Again. And then, after we take down an entire fused Kyurem, with no warning, we get his fight. Featuring a full team of 6 for the first time on this list, including a Cofagrigus to start the fight off very wrong, 4 bruisers with competent movesets, including an Electros that has no weaknesses, and the Crown Jewel. Perhaps the most thematically fitting ace in the entire series to date. Life Orb Physical Hydreigon with maximum power frustration. In addition to having an item that slowly drains his health, this Hydreigon quite literally couldn't hate Ghetsis more. I don't think any further commentary is needed. Overall, an insane climax to an insane game, and props for placing it after the 8th gym leader for once. It was close between Ghetsis and this. I went back and forth for a while. But ultimately, I decided to give the top 5 spot to Distortion World Cyrus because this fight just has so much going for it. The music is an absolute jam, fitting both the character and the fight while making me both excited and very scared to battle. The setting? I don't think I need to describe how fighting the leader of the most ambitious evil team to date in the Distortion world sets the atmosphere perfectly. And the team. A special Houndoom for once, a decent enough Honchkrow, a pretty competent Crobat, the best Weavile that Gen 4 could produce, and that iconic Gyarados, featuring both Earthquake and Ice Fang to hit Electric and Grass respectively. The developers of Platinum went all out in making this fight a spectacle to remember, and it has been remembered. It's an iconic Nuzlocke killer for a reason, even if it's overshadowed in this regard by Cynthia. And overall, it absolutely earns its spot in my top 5. Even if it never had a chance to break the top 4. These top 4 were difficult to narrow down. They're all S-tier fights, and perfect climaxes to their respective games and stories. I won't fault anyone for putting these in any different order, or even putting any of the other fights higher. This is my opinion after all. But with that said, one had to miss out on the podium. And that number 4 spot goes to a story I mentioned earlier in this list. A story that got hijacked by a certain blinding one. A story of family, obsession, and insanity. But what happens when that story gets to be told in full? What happens when the beast is unleashed? This right here. This is the darkest moment in the main series. There's nothing else to say. We're fighting Lusamine fused with Nihilego. There could not be a better conclusion to the story of Lusamine's family, and the biggest sin of the Ultra games was taking it away from us for the sake of Ultra Necrozma. As for the fight itself, Lusamine's insane, her Pokemon are also insane, and all of them have stat buffs. The music is nothing short of perfect, in my opinion, and I still listen to it constantly. Her team's lack of optimal movesets while a point against the fight actually plays into her insanity even more. The only thing holding this fight back, the only thing, is that we don't get to fight Lusamine herself. It's a huge missed opportunity, but it doesn't bother me nearly as much as a lot of people. It's still an utterly incredible fight, and nothing less than a perfect climax. I mean, what else is there to say? It's Mother Beast Lusamine. Now, on to the top 3. I have maintained for years now that Scarlet and Violet would be the best games in the series if they had been released a year later. These games truly shot for the stars, implementing the innovative idea of 3 separate stories that didn't interrupt each other once. And once all 3 were finished, we got the best part of the game's main release, The Way Home. I'm gonna breeze through the build-up. The professor of this game was actually a robot, the real professor's been dead for a while but left contingencies to keep the time machine running, and the time machine has to be shut down or all of Paldea is in danger. Though somewhat predictable, it's still a decent twist, and is one of the many factors that play a part in this simply incredible climax. Under control of the professor's contingency, the AI positions itself far above the player, looking down on whoever would hope to stand in its way. And then, as a simply enchanting theme, courtesy of none other than Toby Fox starts to play, a Master Ball descends from the portal into the AI's hand, and then the battle begins. No matter what version you play, this is a battle against 6 Paradox Pokemon. Most of these have a base stat total of 570, putting them head and shoulders above most options the player has access to. And on top of that, if you're going in blind, you won't know what typing half of them are. And they make the most of that, hitting hard and or fast with pretty close to the best moves they have, with the exception of the 2 Ubers. Physical Screamtail and Mixed Brood Bonnet are also a bit suspect, but it's no big deal. The AI continues to throw Pokemon after Pokemon that the player doesn't know the type of, over and over again, until it's down to the ace. The final Master Ball descends. Either Roaring Moon or Iron Valiant is sent out, and the booster energy held item activates, increasing their attack. It's one final challenge, against an incredibly powerful attacker with 590 BST, that throws everything it has against you, until the AI Professor is finally defeated. As for the interactive cutscene that follows, the spectacle is absolutely there, though the lack of agency does hurt this section of the fight. Still, it's certainly unnerving at first, and finally getting to use the bike in combat is something worth playing through the game for. As I said, the margins are slim. On any given day, this might have been number 1, but ultimately it ended up here. Still, feel proud for a podium placement. It's the last victory AI's ever gonna get. Let's be honest, you knew this fight would be this high. Pokemon Black and White have, by far, the most acclaimed story of the main series games, and for good reason. They managed to implement having a kid be responsible for saving the world pretty well by having N take a personal interest in the player character, pushing them towards a climactic confrontation with him once he's assumed the throne of champion. N wanted a rival. N wanted a challenge. N wanted someone to test himself against to prove that he deserves to rule Unova. And, ultimately, he loses. But before that, we get an absolutely majestic Duel of Legends backed by one of the single greatest music tracks to ever come out of this series, and then 5 entire Pokemon after that. And these Pokemon, though not quite the strongest Unova has to offer, all come equipped with excellent movesets, with the crown jewel being Zoroark. It's the battle N wanted, and it's the battle we're glad to give him. It's the climactic confrontation this game's been building to, and it delivers on every front. And then, Getsus. The single most evil character in the series to date hijacks the plot. It's not hard to see coming, but what might be hard to see coming, it's that Getsus comes fully prepared to destroy the player. Equipped with a full team of 6 that sits 2 levels higher than N's team, Getsus opened with a Cophagrigus that will cripple your lead box legendary with Mummy and Toxic. After this, he hits you with some of Univa's best. Reckless Bouffalant with Head Charge. Swift Swim Seismitoad with powerful stab attacks and Sledge Wave to threaten grass types. The hard-hitting Bisharp. The aforementioned Electros that lacks a weakness to anything bar Moldbreaker Earthquake. And finally, the illegal Hydreigon that hits N's entire team for super effective damage. This team was handcrafted to slaughter N's. Getsus always planned to have a contingency, and I personally believe that he planned to kill N once Team Plasma's rule was established. This back-to-back is iconic for a reason. It's a perfect ending to the most acclaimed story in the series. And yet, it isn't number 1. So let's get to that particular battle. We've seen back-to-back fights before, both in the series and on this list. Even as far back on this list as Lysanderoth, a battle against the box legendary would be followed up by the evil team leader's final battle with the player. We've seen a box legendary battle follow up a battle with the final antagonist in Scarlet and Violet. We've even seen a back-to-back against 2 full teams of 6. But we've seen nothing quite like this before. But before we talk about that, I think I'll let him introduce himself. Yes, that music is none other than the remix of The Piano Before Cynthia. The most terror-inducing music in the entire series, now used as a battle theme for the true horror behind the events of Legends Arceus' story, and using a nearly identical team to his descendant, only swapping out Milotic for Hisui and Arcanine. This is the only fight against a team of 6 in the entire game, and with Legends Arceus' battle system, this fight is designed to make you trade blows with Volo over and over again, whittling down your team until you win by the narrowest of margins. And then... The first thing you'll notice when entering this fight is that, as opposed to every other major back-to-back fight in the series, your team isn't healed before this phase of the fight. With the game's post-game legendary theme blaring in the background, the remnants in your team, which just finished taking a beating from Volo, now have to deal with an Omni-boosted Giratina. Giratina has the firepower and coverage to deal with basically everything, between its stab moves, including the newly annoying Legends Arceus version of Shadow Force, Aura Sphere, and Earth Power. Few trainers will be able to deal with Giratina on their first try. The Renegade Pokemon will most likely send you packing back to the start of the fight with Volo multiple times. But, after learning Volo's fight better, and having more and more left in the tank by the time he brings out Giratina, you will eventually, finally, be able to take Giratina down. It's over. In the single best transition in any Pokemon fight to date, the God of Antimatter gives a grim reminder of its status. Once again without healing, the player now has to deal with an even stronger Giratina, as my favorite legendary battle theme in the entire series plays in the background. And you'd better pray that Giratina doesn't click Shadow Force, because not only will you have to deal with RNG, you'll bear witness to a truly terrifying move animation. This is not a fight you win in the first try, unless you play out of your absolute mind. It is a fight you come back to over and over again, getting better every single time, until after 3 phases, after a battle against a team of 8, with 2 of them being an Omni-boosted Giratina, Pokemon wielder Volo is finally defeated. This fight simply has it all. From truly absurd music, even by the standards of this series, to difficulty stemming from both the battle system and the Pokemon you're going up against, to an overwhelmingly phenomenal atmosphere atop Spear Pillar, to the perfect conclusion to the story of Legends Arceus that had been revealed throughout both the main game and the post-game, it has it all. This may be post-game, but it counts. Arceus is disqualified for the same reason as most champion fights, so Volo's a Legends Arceus rep, and I'm putting him at number 1. Anyway, thanks for watching. I know I've taken a step back from Nuzlocke content, but I said my next video would be media analysis, and this is it. Also, I really want Dex's Den to be better, and I don't have anything against most of the people there, including Dexa himself. Quick shout out to Terra, and if you see this, you know why. Anyway, can't wait for Legends Zaza, and can't wait for the Nuzzies. Bye!